Welcome back to Poorly Educated Today in the News, where every headline escaped a government filing cabinet during a tornado drill. Today we have a peace deal with a return policy, grounded AI, federal raids, the Fed sitting on everybody's wallet, and weather acting like it wants a cabinet position. Segment 1. The peace deal with a receipt. The United States and Iran signed an interim peace agreement, which sounds comforting until you remember, interim peace is just a ceasefire wearing flip-flops on a gravel road. President Donald Trump signed it while dining with French President Emmanuel Macron at Versailles, because apparently nothing cools down a war like fancy plates in a palace built for people who never compare gas prices. Iran says it will dilute enriched uranium, stop pursuing a nuclear weapon, and let inspectors monitor the process, while sanctions on Iranian oil get waived for now. The Strait of Hormuz is reopened toll-free for 60 days. Oil prices dropped, and Americans got 8 minutes of hope before remembering rent, eggs, and insurance still act imported by helicopter. But this peace deal is fragile enough to crack if somebody sneezes near the folder, because Israel launched fresh strikes against Hezbollah, and Lebanon is stuck in the middle like the cousin holding the ladder during a roof fight. Trump publicly told Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to be more responsible, which is one of those sentences that makes history pause and ask if it heard that right. At the same time, NATO is fussing because several European allies would not grant predictable access for U.S. strikes. So Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth showed up swinging a rhetorical weed-eater. The administration's NATO 3.0 sounds like a software update, except the update is Europe buying more fire extinguishers, while America saves the big hose for China. So cheaper oil came wrapped in a ceasefire, a proxy war, and an alliance argument. Segment 2. The robots got grounded. Next, the Commerce Department put export controls on Anthropic's most advanced AI models, which means foreign nationals, including some employees, lost access like the server room hired a bouncer with a passport scanner. The government says the models had a jailbreak problem that could help users find software vulnerabilities, and officials worried foreign adversaries might use that against critical infrastructure. That is real, because nobody wants the power grid bullied by a chatbot with a crowbar. Anthropic says the problem was narrow and not some universal doom button, which is corporate for "don't burn down the barn because one goat learned the latch." But the administration did it anyway and showed America's frontier AI comes with a national security kill switch. That scared allies, because hospitals, researchers, businesses, and cyber defenders abroad got reminded that U.S. tech is like borrowing your neighbor's tractor when the neighbor can take the keys back mid-harvest. Europe is talking louder about technological sovereignty, because nobody likes learning their digital backbone can be unplugged from across the ocean by a country having a policy mood swing. Meanwhile, AI is gulping electricity like a bass boat with a hole in the tank. So tech founders are racing to build nuclear reactors for data centers while the government pays to cancel offshore wind leases and redirect projects toward gas and geothermal power. That is the modern economy in one picture. Windmills being paid to leave while robots demand a nuclear lunchbox, and if the machines become self-aware, their first lesson is politics got them before legs did. Segment 3. Metro Surge meets the Constitution. Back home, Human Rights Watch released a major report on Operation Metro Surge, the federal immigration campaign in Minneapolis and St. Paul that was sold as a fraud crackdown, but now reads like civil enforcement got converted into a masked convoy convention. More than 3,000 ICE and CBP agents were deployed, thousands were detained, and the report says many people swept up had no criminal convictions. The allegations include racial profiling, warrantless stops, unmarked vehicles, chemical irritants, flashbangs, and 2 unlawful killings. That is not small potatoes. That is the whole county fair falling into the fryer, because when people fear every unmarked vehicle, daily life starts moving like a possum pretending to be dead. Then the federal response got hotter, because prosecutors charged people connected to Direct Action Minnesota with conspiracy, while Representative Ilhan Omar demanded an independent prosecutor and called the operation an authoritarian occupation. This is where the country starts asking whether federal power has brakes or just a louder siren. Congress is also stuck over FISA Section 702, the surveillance law that expired on paper but keeps operating under a court certification until 2027, while Trump ties renewal to the Save America Act on voter ID and mail-in ballots. Bill Pulte remains acting director of national intelligence, while Jay Clayton's confirmation is paused, so the spy program, the ballot box, and immigration enforcement are tangled together like Christmas lights in a junk drawer. Segment 4. The Fed put the wallet in timeout. Over at the Federal Reserve, new Chair Kevin Warsh held rates at 3.50 to 3.75%, which is economist language for "your credit card can keep screaming into this pillow." The Fed is still worried about inflation after war. Energy shocks and supply problems made the economy wobble like a shopping cart, with one wheel possessed by a demon. Warsh also refused to put his own forecast into the dot plot, so markets now raid the Fed like a farmer reading clouds and knee pain. The 2% inflation target is still sacred, and that sounds disciplined. But to people staring at rent, groceries, insurance, and a truck payment, it feels like being told the smoke alarm works while the kitchen is actively on fire. The politics are following the receipts straight into the ditch, with polling showing Trump's economic approval around 1/3, overall approval in rough territory, and even some rural voters looking at the economy like it borrowed their chainsaw and brought it back bent. Gas prices have dropped from the war panic, but most Americans still say fuel is a strain, which proves a cheaper gallon does not mean much when the rest of life is charging cover admission. Almost half the country says they are not taking a summer vacation, and cost is the big reason. So the American dream has been downgraded from beach trip to sitting near the sprinkler with a warm soda. You can tell voters GDP growth is projected at 2.2%, but if their grocery cart looks like a museum exhibit labeled former middle class, they are going to vote like a man who just paid $7 for deodorant. Segment 5. Weather, wires, and the soggy panic. While Washington argues about spies, robots, and interest rates, the sky decided to enter the chat with a steel chair. A severe weather outbreak hit Illinois and Indiana with at least 17 tornadoes confirmed, tearing through towns, farms, highways, and power lines. Like the atmosphere had been drinking gas station energy shots. Charleston, Illinois went into emergency mode after hail, tree damage, and downed wires, while parts of Indiana saw major destruction near roads and neighborhoods that did not request a debris field membership. Tens of thousands lost power, travel got messy, airlines issued waivers, and flash flooding added itself to the menu like the weather was running a disaster buffet. Scientists keep warning about hotter oceans, drought to flood whiplash, and systems that swing from dust bowl to kiddie pool before anybody can fix the culvert. Farmers are watching pests and livestock threats. State agencies are rethinking rural transit and forest management, and regular towns are doing what they always do: patch the roof, charge the phone, check on neighbors, and hope the generator does not sound like a dying lawnmower. The absurd part is that ordinary people are told to be resilient, while the systems above them act like resilience is a coupon code. We have power grids that blink, roads that flood, insurance bills that climb, and leaders who discuss long-term planning, like a man choosing which gas station hot dog looks least haunted. So if this is stability, I would hate to see the warranty. In conclusion, America is trying to run a superpower on patched wires, fragile treaties, expensive groceries, nervous allies, and weather maps that look like a toddler attacked them with red crayons. The official message is that everything is under control, but control appears to be rolling around in the truck bed between jumper cables and a melted ice cream sandwich. Keep your receipts, keep your flashlight charged, and remember, if the news ever starts making sense, that is probably when we should really panic.